It was Alex, the original guy that owned the Bugatti in the first place and crashed it. After he got paid out from insurance, it got taken to auction, he then bought the car back.
A YouTuber buys a wrecked Bugatti, not just any Bugatti, one of 60 ever made. He flies across the Atlantic to save it. He documents every bolt, every crack, every impossible repair. Millions of people watch. Then Bugatti's own CEO takes to Instagram and says, "This car should never be fixed by anyone but us." And when that doesn't stop the rebuild, Bugatti locks the car's VIN, cuts off the parts supply, and leaves the project at a standstill. Not because of the crash damage, but because a corporation decided it should stay broken. That story alone would be wild enough. But here's the thing. It's not the only one. Right now, across car YouTube, brands are quietly going to war against creators who give them millions in free advertising every year. And the weapons they're using: cease and desist letters, digital kill switches, and even felony arrests. The $60 million question: who really owns a Bugatti? Here's a detail the headlines misses. Matt Armstrong didn't originally own this car. The Bugatti Chiron Persport belonged to a 25-year-old Miami-based content creator named Alex Gonzalez, who had crashed it himself just 2 months after buying it, while still paying roughly $86,000 per month on the financing. When insurance paid out, most people would have walked away grateful. Alex bought the wreck back. He paid $1.9 million at Copart auction for a car he'd already destroyed, that Bugatti had declared a total loss, and that only 60 of existed in the entire world. The original repair estimate from Bugatti? $1.7 million in parts alone before a single hour of labor. A Bugatti technician had flown in from France to inspect it, declared it a write-off, and from the manufacturer's perspective, that was final. Except Alex wasn't done. He knew Matt Armstrong, the British YouTuber who'd built a career out of bringing wrecked supercars back from the dead, and asked him to come take a look. Matt booked a last-minute flight to Miami.
This was the day of the auction. And with me having my mind set on not buying this car,
even the journey over was chaotic. On the way to see the Bugatti, a Chevrolet cut across 4 lanes and hit a Ferrari, being driven by one of Matt's crew members. By the time they reached the workshop, there were 2 crashed exotics waiting for attention instead of one. The Chiron was in a different league. Front end crushed, airbags deployed, carbon fiber destroyed, the iconic horseshoe grille gone. But underneath all of that physical damage was a problem Matt had never faced before: a locked VIN. Bugatti had flagged this specific car in their system, meaning no authorized Bugatti dealer anywhere in the world would sell parts for it. Not one headlight, not a single panel. The only path Bugatti offered was to ship the car to France for a factory restoration, which could end up costing as much as buying another Chiron outright. Alex told Matt he found that suspicious. Why discount a repair by over $1 million unless the goal was getting the car back to France permanently? So instead, they decided to fix it themselves. No factory support, no official parts. Just Matt, his team, a workshop in Miami, and a car that Bugatti had declared legally dead. What happened next is the part that genuinely surprised everyone, including Bugatti. Matt and his father split the Chiron's chassis, something the CEO had claimed could only be done at one of 2 specialized facilities in the world using a 2-post lift, some scrap, and the wheeled base of a garbage can. The split revealed shattered engine mounts, a cracked transmission.
we're going to put this as well in a case, and then we're going to see if it is actually weldable, so we also have plan Bs.
And a dented coolant pipe, but also a main engine block that had survived mostly intact. Rather than respond with lawyers, Bugatti CEO Mate Rimac posted an Instagram video. He acknowledged the complexity, defended the company's position on safety grounds, and didn't directly threaten legal action. It was a careful, calibrated response. Because what Bugatti understood, and what every brand in this story is figuring out in real time, is that suing Matt Armstrong would make him a martyr. Watching mate Rimac show up in the YouTube comments is the pressure. The locked VIN is the pressure. The refusal to sell a single replacement part is the pressure. The point isn't to win in court. It's to make the rebuild so difficult that it stops. It hasn't stopped. The rebuild is still ongoing. They're 3D scanning broken gearbox brackets and planning to machine custom replacements. They've sent the exhaust to a specialist for a bespoke system. Every video Matt uploads is, at this point, a direct challenge to the idea that a manufacturer can determine what happens to a car once it leaves their factory floor. When they came for Whistling Diesel with handcuffs. If Bugatti blocking parts feels like a cold corporate move, what happened to Whistling Diesel in November of 2025 was something far more visceral. 6 officers showed up at Cody Detweiler's Tennessee property with no prior warning, no letter, no call, no email, and placed him in handcuffs. He genuinely thought it was a prank at first.
All the people in the comments are gonna be like, oh, he was like is staged or something. Dude, I don't even know where we're at right now.
The charge was felony tax evasion. The car in question, a 2020 Ferrari F8 Tributo he'd bought in January of 2023. The same Ferrari that had appeared in one of his most viral videos ever, viewed over 16 million times, in which he drove it into a cornfield in Waco, Texas, until it overheated and caught fire. A rental van parked nearby also went up in flames. His caption at the time, "There goes $500,000. I guess don't drive in cornfields." The legal issue, according to the Williamson County indictment signed on November 5, 2025, was registration. Cody had titled the Ferrari through Whistling Diesel LLC, a Montana entity. Montana has no sales tax on vehicles, making it a go-to move for wealthy buyers who live elsewhere. Had he registered the car in Tennessee, he would have owed roughly $30,000 in state sales tax. The indictment alleged this was a willful attempt to evade tax, a Class E felony under Tennessee law. Cody's response was immediate and public. He posted video of the arrest, then posted a longer breakdown on YouTube titled, "I got arrested for tax evasion," in which he walked through the whole sequence. He said he'd never received any prior notice, no letter requesting payment, no audit, no warning, just officers with a warrant. He argued the Montana registration was completely legal. He pointed out the car had burned to ash in Texas before any of this happened, and he was clear about what he believed the real motive was. Tennessee wanted to use his case with its built-in audience of millions to send a message to every other high-end car owner using the same loophole. They want to make a wave, he said in his video, because they know there will be videos. That framing, the arrest as a performance, a public deterrent aimed squarely at the car community, was picked up almost immediately, because the math was hard to ignore. Thousands of people use Montana LLCs to avoid vehicle sales tax. Cody was one of them. He was also the one who'd publicly incinerated a Ferrari on YouTube, drawing international attention to himself and to the car. Whether Ferrari had any hand in bringing this to the authorities remains unconfirmed. But the timing meant the question kept coming up anyway. Cody was released on a $20,000 bond, not the $2 million some headlines initially claimed. He's now selling T-shirts with his mugshot to fund legal fees and has joked about moving to Montana in protest. His second arrest for similar charges came in January of 2026, while he was arriving at an airport. The case is ongoing, but whatever the legal outcome, something had already happened. A car creator had been arrested on felony charges tied directly to a video he'd made. The line between content and legal liability had never looked thinner. The blacklist, Ferrari, Lamborghini, and how brands cut creators off without saying a word. Not every brand deploys lawyers or law enforcement. Some of the most effective moves in this conflict happen in complete silence. No press release, no cease and desist, just a name quietly removed from a list. James Condon, the Stradman, built one of the most watched car channels on YouTube around a very simple formula: buy rare, colorful supercars, wrap them in purple, drive them hard, and move on to the next one. His audience loved the churn. Ferrari and Lamborghini did not. Both brands operate tight allocation systems for their limited-run models. When a new Lamborghini Revuelto or a Ferrari Icona car is released,
we have my Liberty Walk Lamborghini Aventador Roadster Finish in Rosa. Canvas has got the custom white interior.
the brand controls who gets offered one based on purchase history and the assumption that the buyer will hold the car rather than flip it immediately for a profit. The Stradman's quick flips weren't just a content style. They were seen by these brands as an active disruption of the secondary market they'd spent years managing. So he was reportedly cut off. No formal notice, no explanation, just no future allocations on the cars that matter most. That kind of blacklist is almost impossible to challenge because it's never written down. But there was also a more public moment. In 2023, the Stradman listed a 2023 Corvette Z06 on Cars and Bids. The listing showed the car was unregistered and came with only its manufacturer's certificate of origin, meaning it had never been titled in his name before the sale. That raised concerns about title jumping, where a car changes hands without proper registration, often to sidestep taxes or fees. It triggered an investigation. He later provided documentation showing sales tax had been paid. The Utah State Tax Commission records showed a payment of $12,540 and that the transaction was clean. No charges followed. But the investigation itself was the point. Chevrolet had already warned Z06 buyers at purchase that early resales could void warranties or trigger penalties. And now a state agency had gotten involved. What the Stradman's situation showed wasn't just that brands were watching creators, it was that regulators were too. When your entire business model is documented on YouTube, the receipts are public. There's no operating quietly. The software lock, how McLaren and Tesla turned ownership into a permission slip. Matt Armstrong versus Bugatti gets the headlines. But the deeper, quieter version of this conflict is playing out through technology rather than lawyers, and it affects far more people than just YouTubers rebuilding wrecked hypercars. When Tavares Freddy Hernandez bought a flood-damaged McLaren P1 from Copart for $575,000.
My name is Tavares, and over the past 2 years, I've been working on this car, my $2 million McLaren P1.
He knew the physical rebuild would be brutal. This was car number 348 of just 375 ever made, previously worth close to $2 million before Hurricane Ian dragged it through saltwater in 2022. He'd seen the viral video of it being swept down the street during the storm and never stopped thinking about it. He posted on Christmas Day that year, saying he'd buy it if his post got 40,000 likes. It did. The rest became a multi-year YouTube series. The physical damage was fixable, if extraordinarily expensive. Salt-corroded wiring, mold throughout the cabin, sea foam found inside the cylinders. But the McLaren P1 is a hybrid hypercar, and its hybrid system runs on proprietary factory software that McLaren does not share with independent shops. Waking up the hybrid battery after a flood event, fully recalibrating the powertrain, running proper high-voltage diagnostics, all of it requires tools that exist only within McLaren's own service network. Without access to those systems, the car couldn't charge, couldn't run properly, and for long stretches of the rebuild was little more than a very expensive shell. At one point, Freddie seriously considered removing the hybrid system entirely and converting the car to run purely on petrol. Think about what that means. A creator who owns one of the rarest hybrid hypercars ever made, who paid over $500,000 for the privilege, was contemplating gutting its core technology because the manufacturer wouldn't give him access to the software he needed to use what he'd already bought. The build is still ongoing. The car has since been reimagined as a full custom, now dubbed the P1 EVO, with design input from Frank Stevenson, the man who originally designed the P1 for McLaren. Whether that changes the software access problem remains to be seen. Tesla approached the same problem with considerably less subtlety. In February of 2020, the company updated its policy on salvage-titled vehicles to permanently disable supercharging and third-party DC fast charging across the board via over-the-air software updates.
In 2003, Tesla Motors is founded by friends and engineers Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpening.
Rich Benoit, the YouTuber behind Rich Rebuilds, had made a career out of rescuing flood-damaged Teslas and making them roadworthy again. This policy kneecapped that entire category overnight. Cars that had been properly repaired, that drove perfectly well, lost their most important feature, fast charging, because of a blanket software decision. Tesla's stated justification was safety. A salvage-titled vehicle might not have been rebuilt correctly, and compromised cars shouldn't access their charging infrastructure. Rich and others pointed out that Tesla already offered a salvage inspection program. Paying for that inspection, sometimes hundreds of dollars, still didn't restore supercharger access. The company eventually allowed some rebuilt vehicles back onto the network, but with no public policy announcement and no consistent standard for which cars qualified. It was arbitrary, and the principle it demonstrated is one that now runs through every manufacturer building connected vehicles. You can change what a car does years after it's been sold, without any notice, and without the owner being able to stop it. The body kit, the cease, and what T.J. Hunt versus Ford really tells us. The most revealing case in this whole wave of conflicts isn't the most dramatic one. It's T.J. Hunt versus Ford because it shows exactly how far these companies will move when the threat isn't to their image, but specifically to their revenue. TJ runs a YouTube channel with over 2 million subscribers. In the summer of 2024, he started work on what seemed like a clean project: take a standard, new generation Mustang, build a wide-body kit through his company Street Hunter Designs, and debut the car at SEMA. The body kit, the hood, the fender vents, the rear arches, was inspired by the Mustang GTD, Ford's 815 horsepower limited-run track car that retails for $325,000. Ford moved before the build was even finished. In late October, Street Hunter received a cease and desist letter. TJ, coached by his own legal team, addressed it carefully on camera.
Ultimately, we are a small business, and you can't necessarily fight big major corporate companies.
Without naming Ford, directly describing a large auto manufacturer that had sent a vague letter his lawyers believed was baseless, and that had worked behind the scenes to have his car removed from SEMA. He drove the car 5 hours to Las Vegas anyway. When he arrived, an email was waiting from SEMA staff. The manufacturer had filed a formal complaint with the board. The car was not welcome on the show floor. Ford's official statement said it needed to protect the value and exclusivity for our Mustang GTD customers. SEMA said TJ's decision to pull the car was his own, which, legally speaking, it was. He chose not to force the confrontation. He attended SEMA, did autograph signings, and showed other builds. The Street Hunter Mustang never made it inside. What Ford was actually protecting wasn't a trademark in the traditional sense. It was pricing power. If Street Hunter Designs could sell a wide-body kit that made a $40,000 Mustang look like a $325,000 GTD, the perceived exclusivity of the GTD itself begins to erode. Not every buyer of the GTD is buying the performance. A meaningful portion is buying the look, the statement the car makes in a parking lot. TJ's kit threatened that, not through imitation, but through accessibility. That's a much subtler form of intellectual property concern, and it's one that courts haven't clearly resolved. TJ has since hinted the kit might still come to market. No ruling has been made on whether the cease and desist had legal merit. But the SEMA moment happened. The story was covered everywhere, and the precedent was set. Even at an event specifically designed to celebrate aftermarket modification, a manufacturer can step in and eject a creator's car if they decide the build cut's too close to something they're selling for a premium. Why Matt Armstrong versus Bugatti is just the beginning, and what's actually at stake. Every case in this video, taken on its own, has a defensible explanation. Bugatti is protecting quality on a $6 million hypercar. Tennessee is enforcing tax law. Ferrari and Lamborghini are protecting allocation systems they've maintained for decades. McLaren and Tesla cite safety. Ford is defending intellectual property. Each justification individually sounds reasonable, but look at them together, and a pattern emerges that's harder to dismiss. The tools manufacturers are using: software locks, VIN blacklists, cease and desist letters, parts embargoes. Regulatory complaints are becoming more sophisticated and more aggressive.
On that chassis number of vehicle, they will not supply any component through a Bugatti dealership.
At exactly the same moment that car YouTube is becoming more powerful. These channels collectively generate billions of views. They move markets. A rebuild series on a crashed Ferrari or a flooded McLaren can drive more genuine brand attention than a traditional advertising campaign. And the brands know this. Many of them have gifted cars or sent PR vehicles to these exact same creators. So what changed? The short answer is software. Modern cars aren't just machines, they're networked computers. The Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport has more code running through it than some aircraft. The McLaren P1 hybrid system is a proprietary ecosystem. A Tesla sitting in someone's driveway with a salvage title can be updated, limited, or altered by the manufacturer over the air without the owner ever knowing until a feature disappears. Ownership used to mean you had the car. Now it means you have the car, but they still control what it can do. The right to repair movement is pushing back, and it's gaining real ground. Massachusetts passed automotive data access legislation in 2020. Maine's voters backed a similar measure in 2023 with 84% support. In February of 2025, a coalition of repairers and automakers jointly proposed the Safe Repair Act, which would guarantee independent shops access to the same diagnostic data that authorized dealerships receive. And in Congress, the Repair Act, House Resolution 1566, has drawn wide bipartisan support. A national poll from July 2025 showed 83% of Americans in favor. But here's the limitation that matters. All of that legislation is primarily aimed at independent repair shops, businesses with a commercial stake in servicing vehicles. Even if the Repair Act passes in its current form, it doesn't automatically give Matt Armstrong the right to buy Bugatti parts. It doesn't hand Tavares the diagnostic credentials for a McLaren hybrid battery. It doesn't stop Ford from filing intellectual property complaints against a wide-body kit. The legal framework is moving. The manufacturers are moving faster. What are your thoughts about this? Share with us in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.